So I've been wanting to do a video for a while on all the starter Pokemon and what I personally think about them. And I thought the best way to present which starters I personally think are the best, and which ones aren't as good, would be in the form of a tier list. Now, even though tier lists are commonly used for competitive games, this is going to be a completely opinion-based tier list instead. And because it's my opinion, it means the tier list is definitely going to be very, very accurate. Now, before we start this tier list, let me quickly explain how things are going to go. As you can see, we have 7 tiers, triple S being the best, and F being not exactly bad, but obviously the weakest starter picks are going to go here. I don't hate any starter, but obviously there are starters that are better or worse than others. How this will work is that I'll put each Pokemon in the category I believe they fit in. Any Pokemon that's in the same tier as another, I generally like the same amount. However, the more to the left they are, the slightly higher I consider them in their respective tier. And lastly, each image I use for the starters will represent the whole evolution line. So the Venusaur tile, for example, will represent Bulbasaur, Ivysaur, and Venusaur. And with all that explained, let's get into the first tier being the F tier, which actually only has one Pokemon, meaning that this is my personal least favourite starter. Now, I don't think the starter is bad, it's just not as good as the others. And that starter is, unfortunately, the Emboar line. Okay, so the best thing about this evolution line is definitely Tepig. It's a pretty adorable pig, and very nicely designed, but everything kind of goes downhill when it evolves. Pignite. What the f*** is this? Why is it standing up? Why is it wearing a leotard? Why is it another f***ing firefighting type? I would have no problem with it standing up if it looked good, but it just looks silly. Now, upon evolving, I will admit Emboar did not turn out as bad as I thought. It's definitely an improvement from its previous form, but the bar for that was not set high at all. Emboar is still kind of ugly, and it's without question the weakest firefighting option. I will say one great thing about Emboar is that its shiny is pretty f***ing good. Like, actually better than most of the starters. But taking into account every starter, it's, in my opinion, the worst one. I'm sorry if you like the starter line, it's just definitely not my cup of tea. Again, the line isn't bad, I would just personally rather pick any of the others. Now for D tier. This tier is for the starters that I think are okay. They have some redeemable qualities, but there are still much better starters to choose from. And starting off the D tier, we have arguably the weakest overall starter, which is probably quite fitting, being the Meganium line. Now again, I don't dislike this line at all. I think Chikorita is very cute. Bayleaf is personally my favourite of this line. I think it's a very solid middle stage. Meganium to me is just a bit underwhelming. Nothing really too much that stands out about it, but its design is serviceable for a fully evolved starter. I just don't see a time where I'd pick it in a playthrough over the other choices. Its move pool is also pretty terrible, making it not that fun to use at all. So that and a design that doesn't stand out too much, or as much as the other Johto starters, is gonna put it around this tier. Joining the Meganium line in this tier is one of the newest members to the starter family, being the Primarina line. Now, I know I've made jokes about Popplio in the past, but I will say I do personally think it's a very strong first stage water starter. It probably had the most personality of the Alola starters with all its poses, and even with the early art of it. Brionne, however, I don't want to say it's a step down. I understood the direction they were going with this line. I just felt they made Brionne a bit too overly cute. I'm someone who's more attracted to the cooler looking starters overall, so Brionne isn't particularly a Pokemon I see by my side a lot of the time. Or ever, to be honest. Primarina, on the other hand, I think is solid. I know a lot of people love it, but it's still personally not my taste. The fairy typing is definitely fitting, but when I look at all the water starters, it's personally the last one I'd pick. Last Pokemon in this tier, we have probably the most hated starter overall. Definitely the most hated final stage anyway, and that is of course Delphox and its line. Now, I, like a lot of people, was extremely disappointed when I first saw Delphox. I mainly blame Delphox's 3D model, as it does not do the Pokemon justice, and there's a lot of art of Delphox that makes it look a lot better. And even now I don't hate it, but I do see why it gets the hate and disappointment it receives. I will say I really like Fennekin. In fact, Fennekin was the Kalos starter that I looked to at first, although I did eventually change my mind, but I still think Fennekin is a great first stage. I also think Braixen works pretty well as a second stage starter. It was very clear they were going the mage route, and I think the development from Fennekin to Braixen makes sense. I didn't have a problem with it standing on 2 legs, and I actually like the stick that it has as a wand and keeps it in its tail, to even look like a broom. I just do feel they could have pulled Delphox off much better. Delphox definitely isn't as bad as other people say in my opinion, but still not quite up there with the other fire starters. Alright, moving up the list to C tier. These are for the starters that I think are overall pretty good. There are only a couple of Pokemon in this tier. I say they're slightly stronger choices than the previous starters I've mentioned, but not as quite as solid as the above picks. So starting off this list we have a fellow Kalos starter in the form of the Chestnut line. Chespin I like. It's definitely not my favourite first stage grass starter at all, but it's very cute with an appealing and unique design. It's just when it evolves. I remember when Quilladin was first revealed, seeing its art for the first time, and thinking, this is Pignite all over again. I don't dislike Quilladin nearly as much as I used to, but it still looks pretty funny to me, but definitely not as bad as Pignite in my opinion. And then we have Chestnut. I think it's good. I don't think it's amazing. I do feel it's a bit too different from Chespin and Quilladin, and since it's going for the warrior knight theme, I feel like it could have represented the role a bit better. Its fighting moveset is also pretty lacking. Like, the best fighting move it gets via level up is Hammer Arm, which kinda pales in comparison to other better fighting moves it could have got. So the Chestnut line in my opinion, it's good overall. It just doesn't interest me as other starter lines. Along with Chestnut we have a pretty controversial pick in this tier, and that starter line is Venusaur. Okay, so Bulbasaur is awesome. It is a perfectly good first stage starter. Nothing wrong there. Ivysaur, also pretty cool. Very, very similar to Bulbasaur, and probably could have been a bit more different, but it's still a good second stage. Venusaur is good, but that's about it. I think the main thing that put me off Venusaur originally is that it was not an attractive Pokemon at first. Luckily Venusaur looks much better now, and again, it's still a good starter. It's just the starters above in my opinion are slightly stronger picks. I could easily put all the Pokemon I like in a higher tier and say yeah they're all great, but I'm trying to make this a lot more interesting with 7 different tiers. So Venusaur, still a solid choice, but the starters from here in my opinion only get better. Moving on we have the middle tier, which is also the biggest tier. These are for the starters that I think are overall very good picks, very solid. If it weren't for some nitpicks, these starters could have been higher. So because this tier has the most amount of Pokemon, I'm going to start with 3 off the bat, because I have very similar thoughts about all of them. And those 3 are the Feraligatr line, the Swampert line, and the Empoleon line. So here are my thoughts. I think the first stages of all of them are adorable. I love Totodile, I like Mukip, and Piplup is really cute. The middle stages are kind of awkward. Croconaw is okay, Marshtomp isn't bad, Prinplup is kind of ugly, not gonna lie. It's definitely the most awkward looking of the 3. And then the final stages overall are very solid. Feraligatr is pretty cool, so is Swampert, and Empoleon is pretty elegant, with an interesting typing. So the 3 lines have some bumps along the way, but are solid overall. The next 2 starter lines I also have very similar thoughts on, although in a slightly different evolution order. And funnily enough, they are also both water starters, those being the Samurott line and the Blastoise line. As you can see, most of the water starters I feel very similarly about. So unlike the previous 3 starter lines, Wartortle and Duart are much stronger second stage starters. They both look great, nothing really awkward. The first stages are also good. Who doesn't love Squirtle? Squirtle's awesome. Oshawott, a lot of people think it's one of the cutest Pokemon. It is really cute, but it probably wouldn't appear on a cutest Pokemon list if I made one. As for the final evolutions, Blastoise I have somewhat similar feelings about to Venusaur. It's cool, but it does look kind of like a fat turtle if we're being honest. Especially its 3D model, but still cool overall. Samurott has a pretty intricate design compared to the previous forms. It looks cool, but I do feel it strays a bit too far from its previous stages. Similarly to Chestnut I guess. Still good picks though. Next up in this tier is the second Sinnoh starter appearing on the list. One that some people might be annoyed about me putting it over Venusaur, being the Torterra line. This is probably the most consistent evolution line in this tier. Turtwig, a good solid first stage starter. Grottle, a good solid second stage starter, and Torterra, a good solid final stage starter. I've heard people like to compare Torterra and Venusaur, saying Torterra is kind of a rip-off of it, even though they're completely different. But out of the two, I'd say Torterra has the cooler design, has the mini continent on its back, a very unique design choice, so I personally prefer it to the Venusaur line. So again, a very good solid starter choice. And ending this massive tier is a Pokemon line that I have very mixed feelings about. A part of me wants to put it lower, another part of me wants to put it a bit higher, but I figured this will do fine. The Blaziken line. So, Torchic is a pretty cute fire chicken, although maybe a bit too cutesy for my taste, especially compared to the other two Hoenn starters. Combusken definitely strives away from the cute factor, trying to come across as more cool, but it's decent. Then you have Blaziken. Now, as I've stated in previous videos, there is a part of me that f***ing despises this Pokemon, but at the same time there is a part of me that really likes it as well. I mean, if I was on a Pokemon adventure and I saw any of this line in the wild, you can bet I'd catch it. It's a kind of love-hate relationship, I guess. I do feel Blaziken comes across as pretty overrated at times, but taking the negative bias away, it is overall a great final evolution. Anyone whose favourite Pokemon is Blaziken, I can totally see why. So, top of B tier seems fair to me. Now we arrive at the part of the list where pretty much every starter left is a great choice overall. And starting off the A tier, we have personally my favourite 5th gen starter, being of course the Superior line. So off the bat you have Snivy, being probably the most smug looking first stage starter, easily the coolest of the 3 Unova first stages. Then you have Servine. Like Ivysaur, it's good, it's still very similar to its previous form. Like, this is pretty much exactly what I expected it to look like. And then you have Superior, which in my opinion is the best looking snake Pokemon. Great design, overall, really good evolution line. There is one major problem with this line though, which is why it's at the bottom of A tier, being that it is one of the hardest Pokemon to use in a playthrough, up there with Meganium in my opinion. Not only is its move pool trash, but it has one of the strangest stat distributions I've ever seen, being fast with somewhat decent defenses and bad attack stats. Like, that is not a good combination to have at all. Still, a great starter nonetheless. Just keep in mind you'll more or less be playing the game in hard mode if you pick it. Next we have another grass starter line, the most popular of the Gen 7 trio, the Decidua line. So I think it's safe to say that Rowlet is the most popular first stage starter ever? Maybe? I know it's the most popular Alola Pokemon in Japan, but it's basically loved by pretty much everyone. And yeah, Rowlet's great. I don't love it as much as some people, but I still think it's really cool. Dartrix on the other hand to a lot of people is a step down from Rowlet. I'd say it's decent, definitely not the best second stage starter, but not bad in my opinion. Decidueye on the other hand is cool as shit. I really like the direction they went with this line. The ghost typing was unexpected, yet a nice addition, and using its vines as bows and feathers as arrows is great. Overall, pretty awesome line. And the last 2 starters in this tier, I kind of feel the same about. I was debating whether to put them in the tier above or in this tier, but I figured they fit fine here. And those 2 starter lines are the Typhlosion line and Charizard line. Again, I pretty much like these lines about the same amount. In fact, they're so similar, each Pokemon of each stage has the exact same stats as each other. Why? I don't know. Charmander and Cyndaquil, both perfectly good first stage fire types. Charmeleon and Quilava, both great second stage fire types. Then you have Charizard and Typhlosion. They're both great. I don't know why I found them the same since they look nothing alike, but I've always looked at Typhlosion as Johto's Charizard. I'd say the only reason why I'm not rating them high is because their designs are pretty simplistic throughout the whole line, to be honest, but they're still great choices nonetheless. Alright, so, second to last tier. Here we have the starters where the whole line is pretty much amazing. Almost perfect. You can't go wrong with these picks. So first up in S tier, we have the best that grass types have to offer, the Sceptile line. This is one of the best evolution lines Pokemon has made. Trico, coolest Hoenn starter easily. Probably the best first stage grass starter as well. Great design, loved it in the anime, awesome. Grovyle, one of the best second stage evolutions of any Pokemon. In fact, there was a time where I liked Grovyle so much, When I was a Grovyle on Mystery Dungeon Blue Rescue team, I chose not to evolve for a while. Had arguably the greatest signature move before other Pokemon got it, being Leaf Blade. Also, Ash's Grovyle was awesome. And finally, Sceptile. Fun fact, the first time I properly saw Sceptile was in the anime when Ash's Grovyle evolved into Sceptile, and it was awesome. One of the coolest looking final stage starters. Great design, has a freaking tree as a tail. The only kind of weird thing about this evolution line is that Grovyle grows a leaf on its head, but upon evolving it disappears. Like, what's up with that? Taking that aside though, amazing evolution line. Best Hoenn starter in my opinion. Oh yeah, and it gets Dynamic Punch in Gen 3. I don't know why you'd want to teach it that, but you could. Overall, amazing line. Along with Sceptile, we have a Pokemon that was voted as Japan's favourite Pokemon. And it's pretty easy to see why. Greninja and its line. Froakie is probably the first stage starter that has grown on me the most ever since first seeing it. When X and Y was announced, I leaned more towards Fennekin, but now Froakie is probably my favourite first stage water type starter. Has a great balance of cute and cool. Froggy's just great. Next is Frogadier. Like Grovyle, fantastic second stage design. Looks great, is the reason why I strayed away from the Fennekin line, because it looks so good. A perfectly good second stage. And of course, its evolution. One of the most popular Pokemon ever right now, I believe. Greninja. Not gonna lie, when I first saw this Pokemon being its model that was leaked, I kind of wanted it to be fake, because I saw a Fakemon design of it that I wanted to be real, but Greninja grew on me pretty much instantly. Insanely cool design, somehow pulls off a great look while having its tongue out all the time. Arguably the coolest looking frog in most of fiction. And like the Sceptile line, only one minor gripe. The white bubble scarf it had is suddenly gone. Like, did its tongue absorb it or something? That's pretty much it though. Overall, best water starter easily. Best Kalos starter as well, although not many people are going to disagree there. It also has probably the most perfect shiny form of any Pokemon. Both these starters, perfectly good choices. Definitely try them out if you haven't yet. And we are finally at the last tier. The tier that is held for the most perfectly made starter lines. And from which starters are left, you can probably work it out. The two best starter lines in my opinion are of course Incineroar and Infernape. So let's start with Incineroar. Listen is without question the best first stage of any Pokemon. Sure, Rowlet's great. Litten though is pretty much perfection. It's adorable, yet also cool looking. Its back hairs raise and turn red when it attacks. Its name even has Lit in it. If I could have any Pokemon in real life, it would probably be a Litten. Or maybe not, because it would most likely burn my house down, but Litten is still the closest to a perfect first stage starter. Next is Torchic. Like the previous tier, one of the best second stage starters ever made. How it looks is amazing, the flame collar is amazing, the way it moves in game is amazing, the transition from Litten to Torchic is just so good. Amazing second stage overall. Now let's talk about Incineroar. I'm fully aware that some people don't like Incineroar because it's standing up, or it looks like another fighting type even though it isn't, or dislike it for whatever reason. Those people are wrong. Incineroar is cool as shit. The design works perfectly with the wrestler theme. Its fire belt is probably the coolest fire aesthetic of any fire type. It looks amazing in game, it's badass in the anime. Also in VGC, Incineroar is not only the most used starter, but one of the most used Pokemon, full stop. This entire line, close to perfect, easily a top tier starter. And lastly, let's talk about the Infernape line. Chimchar, an adorable yet cool looking fire chimp. Great first stage overall. Monferno, a fighting type middle stage done right. The other fighting middle stages either look kind of awkward or somewhat inappropriate. Monferno looks awesome. Again, one of the best middle stages. It also looks like it's having so much fun in just about any image it appears in. How could you not like this Pokemon? Amazing middle stage. And finally, Infernape. Infernape is the best Pokemon that Game Freak has ever made. And that is my starter Pokemon tier list. In case you weren't paying attention for whatever reason. Again, this is not a competitive list at all, it's just based on my opinion on which starters I like the most. And since this is my opinion, it's safe to say that this list is very, very accurate. I know that most of you won't be agreeing with this list, so feel free to make your own. I'd very much enjoy seeing other people's opinions on this subject. And if the video does get a good amount of likes and a good response overall, I'll definitely consider doing more tier lists on other things in the Pokemon series in the future. So with all that said, please leave a like if you enjoyed, and if you want to see other possible tier lists, subscribe for more videos in the future, and until next time, thank you so much for watching.